The alien coalition's vast fleet hovered over Earth, their commanders watching with detached confidence as their final instructions were relayed. Earth, to them, was just another planet on a long list of conquered worlds, a minor target they anticipated would fall easily under their advanced weaponry and disciplined ranks. These commanders had spent lifetimes mastering the art of interstellar conquest, honing their strategies over countless campaigns. In their minds, humanity was no more than an amusingly primitive species, barely advanced enough to detect their arrival, let alone put up a fight. The coalition's approach was precise and systematic. The fleet positioned itself to cut off Earth's communication networks and establish a barrier around the planet, effectively isolating it from potential allies or calls for help. This was the first phase, a standard protocol they believed would demoralize humanity even before a shot was fired. The alien commanders leaned back, assured that once Earth's leaders realized the scale of the threat, they would surrender quickly. But the first signs of trouble began to appear as they attempted to disable Earth's satellites. Rather than passive compliance, the coalition scouts encountered rapid response teams scrambling to restore connections, rerouting signals and working furiously to maintain some level of communication. Earth's response wasn't fear, it was organized chaos, a frenetic energy that kept the aliens from fully disrupting the planet's systems. The coalition noted it with irritation but dismissed it as minor resistance, a last-ditch effort that would fade once they demonstrated their superiority. However, as their scouts made first contact with Earth's forces, confusion set in. Rather than forming up in standard defensive patterns, Earth's forces were scattered, fluid, moving through cities and landscapes in a way that defied the coalition's rigid expectations. There was no fixed line to break, no clear command structure to dismantle. Human soldiers seemed to blend with their environment, using their surroundings to hide, regroup, and strike with surprising speed. What the coalition had expected to be a clean sweep turned chaotic, as their forces struggled to locate and contain human resistance. The alien commanders, accustomed to foes surrendering or engaging in predictable maneuvers, were taken aback. Each counter-move by humanity was an enigma, a tactic outside the coalition's experience, pushing their soldiers into situations they hadn't prepared for. What was supposed to be a routine subjugation was turning into a disorienting engagement, with humanity's resistance refusing to fall into the expected patterns. Reports poured in of small human units dismantling high-tech drones with jury-rigged explosives, guerrilla tactics targeting supply lines, and makeshift blockades appearing overnight in strategic locations. The coalition's commanders felt the first flickers of frustration, though they brushed it off as a temporary obstacle. They would regroup, recalibrate, and adapt. They were, after all, masters of war. But Earth continued to surprise them. Human soldiers displayed a reckless tenacity, pushing forward when alien forces expected them to retreat, taking positions the coalition hadn't considered vital and abandoning ones they had expected to be heavily fortified. This apparent randomness left gaps in the coalition's intelligence, causing delays and creating opportunities for human counterattacks. Adding to their confusion was humanity's use of psychological tactics. Broadcasts emerged, cryptic messages cutting through the alien frequencies, distorting orders and confusing the soldiers. Images of the coalition's destroyed equipment, captured prisoners, and cryptic symbols were displayed across screens and public announcements, sowing doubt and panic. Messages aimed directly at the coalition soldiers hinted at horrors they'd face if they continued, breaking the alien forces' cohesion. The alien commanders struggled to contain this unseen warfare, realizing that humanity was fighting on levels they hadn't anticipated, playing on fear, misdirection, and misinformation as much as brute force. The coalition was ill-prepared for such an approach. Their training had focused on conventional battle, where overwhelming power and strategic formations led to quick victories. Humanity's tactics, however, were unpredictable, fluid, and, most disturbingly, effective. The coalition's rigid systems began to crack, as their soldiers grew reluctant to advance into areas where their comrades had disappeared without a trace or where strange messages distorted their vision. As the alien forces regrouped, Earth continued to hold firm. Reports of unusual strategies kept rolling in, makeshift explosives that disabled advanced weaponry, traps that funneled alien soldiers into ambushes, and sudden, highly coordinated assaults on their supply lines. Humanity's approach to warfare was entirely alien to them, a constant barrage of unexpected, unnerving tactics that disrupted their organization. By now, the coalition's confidence was eroding. Their commanders, who had once looked down on humanity with condescension, were beginning to feel the weight of their miscalculation. Earth was no longer a simple conquest, it was becoming a nightmare, a web of resistance that left them grasping at shadows. The coalition commanders tried to adapt, scrambling to deploy their forces in a way that could counter humanity's erratic tactics. They expected humanity to fall in line with the usual progression of battle, but humans had no intention of meeting them on conventional terms. Alien Command watched in growing frustration as human forces moved unpredictably, slipping between the cracks of their formations, striking with unorthodox weapons, and then disappearing before retaliation could land. Earth's forces weren't just fighting, they were waging a psychological campaign that left alien forces unsteady, bewildered, and worn down. Instead of meeting alien soldiers head-on, human units appeared in unexpected places, luring alien forces into carefully prepared traps. They used the terrain to their advantage, transforming familiar landscapes into layered defenses. Abandoned buildings became strongholds, forests and mountains hid ambushes. Cities were rigged with snares, turning every step into a calculated risk for the aliens. Their once intimidating armored transports became trapped in urban landscapes where human snipers and guerrilla fighters made each street a death trap. The coalition's advanced targeting systems proved useless in close-quarter battles, where humans wove in and out of sight with a level of coordination that defied alien expectations. And Earth soldiers were relentless. They used their knowledge of the land, creating a chaotic battlefield the coalition couldn't control. Night raids hit supply depots, targeted alien outposts, and sabotaged critical equipment. Makeshift drones appeared suddenly in the skies, dropping primitive but effective explosives that threw entire regiments into disarray. Improvised weaponry from Earth's underground networks found weak points in the coalition's armor, proving that even their most fortified technologies had flaws. For the coalition's highly trained soldiers, this approach was as frustrating as it was terrifying. These weren't battles. These were mind games, coordinated by a species that seemed to understand the value of unpredictability. Meanwhile, Earth's forces launched psychological strikes with as much precision as they did physical attacks. The coalition's command structure depended on secure communication lines, but those channels became compromised, distorted by hacked broadcasts and Earth's own messages. Alien soldiers began receiving conflicting orders, messages from human operatives that mimicked their own commanders, sending them marching into traps and dead zones. This sowed an insidious fear, where every message could be a human deception, leaving soldiers hesitant and paranoid, doubting even their own leaders. The psychological assault went further. Earth's leaders and cyber specialists employed misinformation campaigns designed to target alien morale. Alien troops encountered strange messages in their own language, detailing the losses they'd sustained, warning of Earth's endless reserves and resilience. Images of fallen alien soldiers circulated through hack systems, and morale-shattering messages painted humanity as an unbreakable force. Alien soldiers found themselves fighting not just a physical war but a mental one, with every encounter against humans bringing an increasing sense of dread. This unconventional warfare, blending physical tactics with psychological manipulation, began to wear down even the most hardened members of the coalition. The alien commanders, once secure in their plans, now struggled to make sense of the reports pouring in. Their soldiers were growing reluctant to follow orders, haunted by the threat of traps and ambushes. Alien officers who once dismissed Earth's resistance as a futile effort now hesitated to advance, aware that every step could lead into another meticulously planned death zone. In the midst of this, Earth's leaders recognized the shifting tide and pushed even harder. Humanity's tactics shifted to high-intensity strikes, targeting essential supply lines and command posts. They coordinated with precision, using rapid deployment teams to take out alien communications centers, fuel stores, and ammunition depots. The coalition, known for its meticulous planning, now found itself without the logistical support it had relied on. Fuel shortages and disrupted supply lines left their forces stranded, while human fighters moved in with calculated, relentless strikes. Each step in the Coalition's path turned into a stumbling block. Alien Command, used to adapting to predictable forms of combat, found themselves chasing shadows. Humanity's adaptability left them guessing, scrambling to fill gaps that opened faster than they could respond. Alien regiments that had never lost a battle now found themselves isolated, surrounded by human forces who attacked with ruthless efficiency. The Coalition's commanders, once so certain of their superiority, began to question whether they were facing an enemy unlike any they'd encountered. What unnerved them the most was humanity's sheer tenacity. Despite the Coalition's advanced weaponry and overwhelming numbers, human forces fought as though surrender was unthinkable, their tactics evolving with every clash. Earth soldiers seemed to welcome the fight, adapting faster than the Coalition could keep up. Every move the aliens made was countered with a maneuver they couldn't predict, a tactic they couldn't match. The Coalition was no longer advancing. Their forces, once poised to conquer, were now focused on survival. They realized that they'd underestimated humanity not just as fighters but as a species. What they thought would be a swift conquest had become a grueling conflict, a lesson in a kind of war they hadn't known was possible. And as they prepared to regroup, the Coalition's commanders couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that they were the ones being hunted. The Coalition's forces were unraveling, pushed to their limits by an enemy that seemed to thrive on chaos and unpredictability. Alien commanders, who once held Earth in contempt, now watched in growing dread as their meticulously trained troops faltered under relentless human tactics. Every attempt to regroup was shattered by sudden, perfectly timed strikes. Humanity's resilience was proving to be something they hadn't planned for, a resistance that grew stronger, more determined, with every clash. Humanity had mastered not only physical warfare but psychological warfare that was as debilitating as any weapon. The Coalition soldiers, trained to execute commands without question, now hesitated, questioning every order. Every alien regiment that moved forward did so with the weight of distrust, knowing that the next command could be a trap, a carefully crafted human ploy meant to push them further into disarray. Earth's forces intercepted their lines, distorting messages, creating false directives, and feeding misinformation that spiraled into a fractured, panicked force. The aliens were beginning to understand that they weren't just fighting an army, they were fighting a collective will, an unyielding force that seemed to anticipate their every move. The strain was evident in the ranks. Alien officers reported disobedience, something previously unheard of in their tightly disciplined forces. Soldiers began deserting, fleeing their posts rather than facing the unknown, the traps that waited for them in every city, every forest. What the Coalition had expected to be a show of power had turned into a test of endurance, one that Earth's forces seemed increasingly eager to meet. In a last-ditch effort, alien commanders turned to brute force, ordering widespread destruction to bring humanity into submission. Massive energy weapons targeted major cities, their aim to shock and demoralize. But Earth's response was swift. With practiced coordination, human forces dispersed, evacuating civilians and drawing alien forces into uninhabited areas where battles could rage without loss of innocent life. Alien commanders found themselves bombarding empty cities, firing into forests that seemed to swallow their soldiers whole. Their weapons left scars on the landscape but made little impact on Earth's resistance. Meanwhile, human forces pressed forward with deadly precision. They launched counterattacks on key supply chains, targeting energy sources and weapon caches with relentless strikes. Alien depots went up in flames, their ammunition stores destroyed in blinding explosions. Every successful strike left the Coalition weaker, more vulnerable. Earth's forces were growing bolder, pushing their advantage, grinding down alien resources with a calculated ferocity that sent tremors through even the Coalition's highest ranks. The Coalition's leadership, desperate and worn down, resorted to even more extreme measures. They attempted a planetary lockdown, cutting all escape and reinforcement routes, hoping to isolate Earth's forces and finally gain control. But humanity anticipated this, using their own ingenuity to bypass alien tech, setting up back channels and coded signals to keep their networks intact. Earth's decentralized resistance continued without interruption, undeterred by the Coalition's attempts to cut them off. Reports of alien morale continued to plummet. Once feared warriors now trembled at the thought of going into human-controlled territories, wary of hidden traps and ambushes. Human soldiers showed a ruthlessness that defied the Coalition's expectations, an unbreakable will that made even the most advanced alien strategies feel inadequate. The Coalition's command centers received plea after plea from their ground forces, soldiers who could no longer hold formation, officers who confessed that their troops were beginning to refuse direct orders. In the Coalition's capital ship, the lead commander, who had once mocked humanity as a minor obstacle, now faced the unthinkable. What had begun as an assured conquest had devolved into a struggle for survival. Earth's tactics weren't just unexpected, they were devastating, as if humanity had somehow weaponized their very will to survive. The commander knew that if they did not retreat soon, they would lose not only this battle but perhaps the loyalty of their forces forever. The realization came too late. Humanity had forced them into a corner, a place of vulnerability they had never experienced. Alien soldiers on the ground were abandoning their posts, retreating, knowing that every step forward was a step deeper into Earth's relentless, unforgiving resistance. Earth was no longer just a target, it was a proving ground, a place that had exposed the Coalition's weaknesses, their reliance on predictable patterns, their underestimation of an enemy that refused to back down. The Coalition's leaders, once confident of their superiority, now found themselves confronted by a truth they couldn't ignore. Humanity was a force they hadn't seen before, one that fought with a ferocity that surpassed logic, an adaptability that defied reason. And as they ordered the final, reluctant retreat, alien commanders knew that humanity had changed something fundamental, had shown them that they knew nothing of true war. The Coalition's fleets pulled back, their retreat marking the first defeat they had faced in centuries. Alien commanders, once supremely confident, were now silenced by the harsh truth that humanity was unlike any adversary they had encountered. Every escape route was littered with the wreckage of a campaign that had spiraled beyond their control. Soldiers returned battered, mentally broken, haunted by the brutal persistence of human resistance. For the first time in their history, the Coalition understood that they had no words to describe what Earth had shown them, a form of war that defied their calculations, a resilience they couldn't extinguish. The tales of Earth's resistance spread quickly, reaching distant worlds even before the defeated fleets limped back home. Minor civilizations that had suffered under the Coalition's rule watched in awe as rumors of humanity's stand began circulating, stories of soldiers fighting as though each battle was their last, each strike infused with an intensity that could only come from defending one's very existence. For the countless planets that had been subjugated, humanity's victory was more than just a defeat of the Coalition. It was a beacon of hope, a signal that defiance was possible. Across the galaxy, the impact of Earth's resistance began to resonate, inspiring whispers of rebellion, quiet pockets of unrest that the Coalition couldn't ignore. Within the Coalition's command, leaders deliberated, reeling from the damage to their reputation, their forces, and their authority. Humanity's tactics, unorthodox and relentless, had exposed vulnerabilities that shook their core assumptions about war. They had relied on strength and fear to keep their empire stable, and it had worked for millennia, until Earth. The Coalition's leaders faced the unsettling truth that they hadn't simply lost the battle, they had lost their aura of invincibility. It was now clear to their people and their subjects alike that their power wasn't absolute. The Coalition had witnessed the limits of its dominance, laid bare by an enemy that turned every assumption on its head. Earth, however, did not bask in victory. Humanity understood that they had only bought themselves time, that this retreat was just a pause in an ongoing struggle. They had repelled the Coalition, but the galaxy was still vast and dangerous, filled with powers that would not view Earth's defiance kindly. So, humanity braced for the future, knowing that more battles could come, each requiring the same level of unity, resilience, and ingenuity they had displayed here. Earth's leaders began working to prepare defenses, to study alien technology and enhance their own, making sure that the next time they faced the Coalition, or any other power, they would be ready. But as Earth moved forward, their reputation grew. Species that had once dismissed humanity as a backwater civilization now watched them with respect and a trace of fear. Human ingenuity, their refusal to surrender, had redefined what it meant to fight for survival. In the eyes of many across the galaxy, Earth had set a precedent. They had shown that victory wasn't always about superior technology or numbers. It was about spirit, adaptability, and the courage to face insurmountable odds without flinching. The Coalition's defeat became a turning point. Minor factions began forming alliances, subtle at first but growing bolder, inspired by humanity's refusal to be conquered. Planets that had once lived in quiet submission began organizing, their own forms of resistance ignited by Earth's example. And slowly, whispers grew louder, questions were raised about the Coalition's authority. The galaxy began to shift, with the Coalition forced to grapple with the fact that their rule was no longer unchallenged. For humanity, the fight had only just begun. Earth had entered a new era, one where they were no longer invisible to the galaxy. They knew that surviving as an independent world would demand the same spirit they had shown during the invasion. But humanity had proven their strength, not only to the Coalition but to themselves. They were no longer a species bound by fear or isolation. They were now a symbol of defiance, a reminder to the galaxy that true power came not from domination, but from the indomitable will to survive. And as the Coalition's wounded fleets faded from their skies, Earth looked forward, not with fear, but with resolve, prepared for whatever challenges the galaxy would bring next. Humanity's legacy was now etched across the stars, an undeniable force that had turned the tide of war and left an enduring mark on the galaxy.